Loud East wrestling fans, I am longtime independent wrestling fan Robert. Man Down was a very good show as Loud East Wrestling had its first event held at St. Camillus in far Rockaway section of Queens, a few train stops away from Rockaway Beach. We opened up the show with the Grim Reaper, who found the founding father of Loud East Wrestling, and Julius Smokes. And Smokes was on the microphone explaining that his wife passed away on Easter Sunday. Reaper said he had a cousin who had died of cancer, and also mentioned that former ECW champion Sabu had passed away, and they had a 10-bell salute for all three of them. But I noticed not everybody stood up for that 10-bell salute, 10-bell salute. From there, we had we finally get the action underway. And by the way, folks, I actually arrived at the building. I think they already opened up by the time I got there. I don't know if it was between 6 and 6:30 or between 6:30 and 7 I arrived. Because the show was supposed to start at 7 and it started maybe close to 7:30. And this turned out to be this was the same exact building that Outlaw Wrestling held a show in back in the summer of 2022. The difference is that at the Outlaw show back in 2022, they let the crowd in on 100th Street. But this, for Loud East, which ran there, they actually were kind enough to post signs that said live wrestling with an arrow pointing down 100th Street. And then there was like a parking lot that we went in through they let the crowd in through a door right by the parking lot, and And I honestly, folks, it was so warm in that building. We know it got warm the day of the show, but my goodness, I don't know if that place has any air conditioning. I mean, luckily, after it got dark outside and there was a bit of a breeze coming through the doors, it cooled off a little bit. And the weather was nice and cool by the time I left the place. But on to the action. We start out with a battle royal where the winner would be entered into the scramble match later in the show. I didn't recognize everybody that was in this. There was somebody dressed up as Catwoman. Not sure if that was a man or a woman. You had Jay Lover, who was like doing camera work at ringside. He inserted himself, and it came down to him and Irish Bruce, or is it Irish Brute? He was known as Irish Virus in the past. And the two of them went at eventually Irish Brutes or Brute. He won the battle royal too, but the fans were eating him alive. They were chanting "Celtics suck" because the Boston Celtics were basically kissed the NBA championship goodbye the night before this event as they were eliminated by the New York Knicks. The problem was, I mean, folks, the Celtics, you can say they suck, but obviously for now, they are now hibernating until the new NBA season comes this fall. Then we have tag team action as we see Cash Grab. I believe they're from House of Glory's promotion, Legacy Pro Wrestling. I forgot their individual names. They took on Mad John and KB King representing the Wave. Mad John and KB King were victorious over the Cash Grab at 7 minutes 3 seconds. The Battle Royal, I forgot to mention, went with 12 minutes 33 seconds. Next up, we have singles competition. We see Jay Bougie takes on Shane Rose. Shane Rose, he came out to Sade's Smooth Operator, which that song was out when I was about 7, 8 years old. Memorable song from the 1980s. But I gotta say, as great as these two had their match, it was pretty. I mean, I'm not gonna say it was overshadowed or whatnot, but there were so many kids in the crowd, and I gotta say the show drew a great crowd in this one. I will say, and I'll get back to that later on. But I gotta say, those kids, they were like all over, like giving out sights for the bird watchers, and at one point they were throwing stuff in the ring. Jay Bougie defeated Shane Rose at 11 minutes 5 seconds, and those kids sitting across the room from me, let's just say they were pretty much jumping for joy over Bougie getting the win. And then right after the match, someone took the microphone and said to everyone, namely the children, please don't throw anything in the ring. Next, we were excited to see a tag team match pitting Benny Blanco and John the Animal to face Hamlet, Hurtsu, and Bones. Well, Bones, I don't know if that's the same Bones that was from the early years of House of Glory. Hamlet takes the microphone. He says, I'm here to talk about Shakespeare. And he pointed out that John the Animal, I guess, didn't show up, so it was a singles match, which saw Hamlet hurts you, me. He defeated Benny Blanco at 8 minutes 22 seconds. Then a match that had been building for some time, as we saw the Perfect Ratio, Adonis Stone defending the Lionheart Championship Wrestling against the Absolute Chris Cage. Stone was accompanied to the ring by Wave members Mad John and KB King. Stone and Cage were having a pretty good matchup. Eventually, KB King hits the ring, spears Chris Cage. Referee calls for the bell. Chris Cage defeats Adonis Stone at 10 minutes 43 seconds, but Adonis Stone still Lionheart champion. Stone then is trying to have a conversation with KB King and I believe, was it King or Mad John? Well, they ended up attacking Stone. They also attacked Chris Cage as well, and I don't know if something went wrong with Stone. I mean, he was down on the mat, and the doctor came out to check on him. Eventually, they announced the crowd was intermission, but eventually Chris Cage gets up, and actually I forgot, Johnny Rambo, he came in the ring with a chair, but I think he hit Stone or Cage with it. I can't remember everything, folks. I mean, it's the next day here. Once the show's going the books, everything's a blur. From there, but eventually, Rambo, Mad John, and KB King, but eventually, after the intermission was announced to the crowd, Cage gets up, and I forgot it was Rambo or King he was going at it with, and eventually Stone was helped away from the ring. Okay, from there, after intermission, we had the Scramble match, where I believe it was supposed to determine a #1 contender for the Lionheart Championship. It was Ben Rutan versus The Master, Wes Draven, versus Black Zemis, versus King Jeter, versus Irish Brute or Bruce, versus Salvador, versus the artist formerly known as Dash, who came out dressed up as the late singer Prince and came out to the song Purple Rain. The funny thing is, there were kids in the crowd chanting Michael Jackson at him. I'm sure those kids probably weren't even born yet when both Michael Jackson and Prince passed away. They both passed away 7 years apart, so how would they even know the difference between those two men? Okay. But Scrabble match, Wes Draven was victorious over Ben Rutan, Black Zemis, King Jeter, Irish Bruce or Brute, Salvador, and the artist formerly known as Dash at 6 minutes 52 seconds, and Salvador was sporting Eddie Guerrero gear circa 1995. Okay, then up next we had singles competition that we saw. The Colossal Mike Law took on Pedro Pablo. Or was it just Pedro they introduced him as? Pretty good matchup. Mike Law made his Loud East debut. And Pedro Pablo defeated Colossal Mike Law at 11 minutes 59 seconds. After the match, Mike Law got the microphone. He thanked Loudies for booking him and hopes to come back. Up next was pretty much a match that kind of stole the show, as we saw Jimi Hendrix do battle with Gabriel Sky. Sky, they said, was from the Rockaway area, far Rockaway area. Great, very good matchup. This is like the best match I saw Jimi Hendrix have. But Gabriel Sky was victorious over Jimi Hendrix at 17 minutes 30 seconds, and I noticed that they hugged after the matchup. So this was very good, and good to see Gabriel Sky still comes out to How Soon Is Now. I think it's the original version he comes out to, not the 1990s version, which was ended up being used for the theme of the TV show Charmed, which featured an actress who's not acting anymore, Alyssa Milano. And then the Grim Reaper comes out with the Tag Team Championship belts, and it looked like they were put on some type of a clothing hanger, and then they climbed the ladder to hang the belts above the ring. As we saw, the Uptown Boys, Jarrett Diaz and Matt Awesome, to battle with Colin Parker and young Gordy J. Alfredo, and the mystery team, which turned out to be Johnny Rambo and LK Justice. LK Justice, I think, works for Legacy Pro, unless I'm mistaken. The Backseat Boys were on the flyer. I thought they'd be the third team, but apparently they didn't show up. Match gets underway, and I guess something went wrong, because one of the tag belts that was hung up from the ring fell down because the ladder bumped into that, into that. Like I said, it looked like a clothing hanger. The belts were put on first, and then Reefer went to hang them up before the match got underway. But one of the belts fell down, and while all three tag teams were outside on the floor, Reefer took it upon himself to set the ladder up, and the referees were holding the ladder for him so it wouldn't break, and even the crowd was chanting Reefer, and he hung the second belt back into place. Eventually, a cool spot, Colin did a splash off the top rope onto Jarrett Diaz, who was laying on a ladder, where that ladder Diaz was laying on was bridging the ropes to another ladder. The Prospects eventually climbed the ladder and grabbed the belts. The Prospects defeat the Uptown Boys and the duo of Johnny Rambo and LK Justice at 8 minutes 54 seconds to become Loud East Wrestling's first ever tag team champions. And Colin Parker, he took the microphone, he said, and he thanked the crowd, and he said, we will be back, I promise. All right. And then they had like a 50-50 raffle going on that night, and I think like they finally announced the winner, because right after Prospects were leaving the ringside area, went to use the bathroom, and I come back out, and then they announced the winner, and then I had taken my leave. Okay. Well, personal notes time. It was good to see Stella, Novi. Who else I knew that I noticed in this crowd? Well, after the show ended, Colossal Mike Law saw me, and I had not seen him. I think maybe since, as I said to him, I probably hadn't. Last time I saw him wrestle was pre-pandemic, and it was probably for Pro Wrestling Magic. Mike, hopefully you get booked, and they book Loud East books you again, and I wonder if they'll book your brother Stephen Dumang to referee someday. And speaking of referees, one of them was Scarlett. I know she works at House of Glory, and she was part of the Leather Jacket Mafia in I think it's IWA, which runs in Nutley, New Jersey. Ugh. All right. A lot of good-looking ladies in the crowd, and as I said, the crowd it was a good crowd draw for this. Front row was already sold out. Okay. One thing I got to address. I mean, I mentioned about those kids giving out sites for the bird watchers. I mean, I know it's a parent's job to teach their children right from wrong. At the same time, I also feel, these children who like stand should not be standing in front of everyone sitting in the front row. Those who sit in the front row, they pay their money to see the show, but these children, I mean, come on, like, I'm not going to say where are the parents and sound like my late father when I say this, but come on, I mean, I don't have children myself, but if it was my son or my daughter, I would just, walk over there and say, look, no, you can't stand here. Something should really be done about that. But of course, that's up. It's like these parents out there who don't want to like discipline their kids or something. That doesn't mean spanking them or beating them up. Just watch some old episodes of Super Nanny and use that naughty spot technique. Now, no return date was announced for Loudy's Wrestling's next event. I sure hope they do have a show some point in the summer. Maybe back at St. Camillus, because it was pretty convenient for me. Just take buses to get down there. I know I forgot what train station, A train stops there, but I think they had shuttle buses running instead. And as I mentioned, Backstreet Boys didn't show up. John the Animal didn't show up. We were supposed to see, it was going to be Ruthless Lala taking on the artist formerly known as Dash one-on-one, but she didn't make the show, and I know she was competing for Pro Wrestling Magic in New Jersey. Ugh. Hey, let me see, anybody else that didn't show? Anyone else I could think of that didn't make the show, that was scheduled to be on the show? Okay. Hopefully Wes Draven will be there on a regular basis. But if Wes Draven, if that is a number one contender for the Lionheart Championship, I guess maybe the next show will be Wes Draven against Adonis Stone. But also the situation now with the Wave, I don't know if the group is no more, or it's going to continue without Adonis Stone. So who knows where they're going to go with that. Okay, I think that will do it. Ugh. I know they were like barbecuing outside, but I had already stopped to eat somewhere on the way over. I could like able to smell whether they were making hamburgers out there, and I forgot how much they would charge for that. But I already ate before I even made it to the building. So Loudy's Wrestling, it was great to be back. My first show since Super Blood back in November. Again, hope you run a show in the summer at St. Camillus, or if not, a building that's got some that won't get so hot in there. All right, Loud East, Loud East, Loud East, Loud East. This was very good.